So let's look at the construction and sales tab. Now, in the previous videos, we discussed how we get these kind of development summaries for our developments from the architect, which has all the details about each of the townhouses. What are we going to build? What size garage is going to be? What size the lower ground, the floor levels are going to be, and so on. So what each of these townhouses are actually going to be, what size they are going to be, and what size we would be required to actually build, and what the saleable area is actually going to be is determined from this development summary. Now, there are different methods. If you don't have that, that's also not a problem. But if you're doing a detailed feasibility, you should have these details on you. If you haven't got those details, you can still do a feasibility, and I'll show you how we can go about doing them. So let's look at the feasibility. This feasibility actually has three different methods, and you can use all three of them. But just to give you a rundown on what it actually looks like, whether it's the Australian version, whether it's the international version, they look exactly the same. There is no difference in them whatsoever. So the way we're going to do that, the only difference is that there's square feet in the international version, and in the Australian version we've got square meters. So what are these things? So on the left side, these columns, these are your units. So you can call them townhouse 1, 2, 3, apartment 1, 2, 3. You can even put details like 2-bedroom, 2-car garage, or whatever details you want to put them. So these are all customizable. So you can call them townhouse 1 if you wanted to, and then pull it down all the way here. So you've got option to actually put 20 of these units, and with each 20 of them, if you've got the same configuration on them, you can actually put like 5 of the same configuration and then 10 of the same configuration, so that you can actually multiply that and go about calculating the total built area as well as the total saleable area. So you've got three different methods. One is average cost per meter square. Then you've got number of units what you are building. You'll always have to enter these numbers over here. You've got average cost per unit if you wanted to actually put them in manually. And then you've got now everything in here which is green, and everything here that's under the blue tabs, which is your car yard or private open space or your balcony or your entry point or your garage or your roof terrace or your basement, whatever these details are. When we actually try and sell them, we usually allow for the livable area. Now, if you're building a house, a single dwelling, and you've got basement that will be part of the living area, don't put it here, put it in the NSA. NSA stands for net saleable area. So I'll put a little bit of a green shading so that you understand, because your saleable area or your sale price for these units will be calculated from the values you actually put into this column. So I've got 4 different saleable areas. That is if you go from ground floor, first floor, second floor, and a basement, or a third floor, if it is a single dwelling and has everything. Each of this line represents 1 unit or 10 units if you change the value over there. And this is the area that still has to be built in order for this area to be functional. So everything from column J8 to O28, all this area is used to calculate the total area so that we can calculate the total construction costs. And the net saleable area is only a total of these. So if you double click on any one of them, it'll tell you what is actually totaling and what this is totaling, so that you understand. And that's just a percentage of the total area and the total net saleable area. And then you've got the construction cost based on the option that you actually select here. And we'll get into the saleable area in a second, but let's just look at these options first. So the first one is individual area cost per meter square. So what that actually means out of the 3 is that when I say individual, sometimes some developers like myself, you can actually figure out what each area is actually going to cost, because each one of them is different. And over here up top, you can actually, residential construction costs, you can actually put in values of what each area is going to cost you to actually build per square meter, or in the international version, it can be per square feet. So you'll have to put in those areas. Now I had the same value, so they don't look, but because if it's square feet, this area is actually going to be instead of 24, it'll be 240 or something like that. So with the going back to the Australian version, so if you know what these values are, you can actually put them here. If you don't know what these values are and you just want to put a flat rate, you can still put a flat rate over here and then copy that across to all of them, and then it'll be a flat rate. But I only use it when I've got these, and I actually leave them there, so they come pre-populated with something like this. So if you wanted to change them and you've got individual area cost per meter square selected over here, make sure that you go ahead and change them, and based on what the values that you actually put over there, your construction costs will be calculated based on the values that you put in here. So if I think that it's going to be a high spec home and I'm going to allow maybe $1,800 for this. Now even this area can be changed based on if you wanted to call it first floor, or you wanted to call it ground floor, first floor, second floor, and I'll just leave that blank because I don't have any other area in this scenario. And all these areas that you see they've all come from the development summary that I get from my architect. So I populated this area already, and we can put in these details for these 11 townhouses. And now I know that I've got your courtyard and all those things. So that's how my construction costs get calculated, and I get a total over here. Now, if you wanted to go with the other option is that you select average area cost per unit. So when you select that, you'll see that all of this will go blank. This is just conditional formatting. Those values are still there. So if you selected any of the columns, you'll see that they still have the values, but this is just to visually be able to prompt you that you don't have to put anything over here. So now in this scenario, if you estimate that for you to be able to build a unit, it's going to be an average cost of $350,000. So if you put $350,000 in this column, it'll override anything that you put in over there, and you can pull that down and fill all of that up, and then you'll see that all your construction costs are now $350,000 as an average. This is in case you have no idea what this table is going to look like, what they are going to be, and it is still early stages. So you can use this option in this scenario. You still have to put in the number of units that you've got, so you could put in 5 over here. And in that scenario, instead of 11, it's going to get 4 more are going to get added to this thing. So it'll be the number of units are going to jump up to 15, for example. So this is the second method of doing this. And the third method of doing this is average cost per meter square, which is basically the same that if I was to put in $1,400 all across the top, it'll give you the same effect. So in this scenario, I can come in here and put in $1,400 as a flat rate. That this is what I know, and then everything will get calculated based on that. Now, always remember that if you put in something here and then go back and change something else, these values won't change because there's still $1,400 per square meter allowed in there. So make sure that this is deleted. So once this is deleted, and then you go out and choose another option, you can, and the values will be based on what you've allowed for. Now, again, in this scenario, as you can see that I still have 350 showing because I put in a flat rate. That's because these columns still have 350,000 allowed for in there. So I can go in there and I go select all of them and make sure that I delete them. And that way I'm now using this option as my total construction cost calculation. I tend to just stick with this in 90% of my cases, 90% of my feasibilities that I do, because then I can quickly go and change what these are and then still adjust them more in a more fluid manner than to be able to get stuck with a $350,000 flat figure. Because as you can see, some of them are 247, some of them are 226, then they fall to 195 and 196. So you can allow an average, but that's not as accurate as allowing a square meter rate or a square feet rate for each individual area. So that way I've got my construction costs going the correct way.